All right, Hot Breathiverse. Welcome back to Hot Breath Live. I am your host, comedian Joel Byers. This is Comedians on Skype Talking Comedy. If you're watching this on YouTube, all of the questions are being asked within our Facebook group. So if you'd like to join in on future Q&As, click the link in the description, join our Facebook group, and start connecting with comedians like today's guest, who was actually on our podcast way back in episode 68. This was back in 2016, is now 2020, and she has done so many amazing things since then, and we're so excited to have her. Please welcome back to Hot Breath, the one and only Emma Willmann, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for Emma Willmann.
Thank you so much, Joel. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yay!
How you doing?
I am doing great. It's so great to connect
Good.
with you.
I can't believe that was 4 years ago.
I know. Like I was thinking about it when we booked this. I was like, remember it was in the basement of the Laughing Skull,
Yeah.
and it was just you were just like in town for like I don't even know, like not long, and we just scheduled it, and then to see what you've
Yeah,
done.
I had done a college, I think. I remember I had like a college like pretty far out in Georgia. Like, it was a couple hours from Atlanta. I had a college on a Wednesday, and then I was like, "Oh, I should just stay." I remember I got like a little like Airbnb, and I had some friends in Atlanta, so I was like, "I'll stay and visit them." And then I did some guest spots at the club
Mm-hmm.
that weekend.
That was and it was
Yeah.
cool. You had
Great
just
club.
yeah, well, Laughing Skull's great, yeah. And you had just I think you had just been on Colbert not that long ago.
Oh
And
wow.
I was in this mindset at the time. I'm not anymore. I love just being a comedian, continue to grow and evolve. But at that time, I was like, I gotta get a late night set. I need that validation. And you actually you shared the Booker's info with me. I mean, you were like, yeah, go for it. But what's interesting in researching you to follow up with this, with our follow up interview here, is like you're in this big mindset of just focusing on what you can control and not anything else. And do you think
Well,
that's
trying to. I mean,
uh huh.
that's definitely easier said than done. So
Yeah.
trying to. I wish I was a better example of that. I definitely think a lot about why didn't I get this person to do. So I'm glad I said that thing because I do try to do that.
But what do you
Didn't mean to.
it seems like you have it seems like you figured out something since the last time we talked in the
Mm,
past 4 years. It seemed
mm.
what did you figure out, Emma?
Man, Joel, I don't think I've actually figured anything out. So I'm curious what makes you think I figured something out. But I really appreciate that very much.
So you're now on your third podcast. Your content is very well. It's consistent. It's of a very high quality. It seems like it's a very intentional kind of marketing strategy you do now. All the way from like your business to even like personal side. It seems like you took a big shift in your overall personal health as well. Like what
Yeah.
was it? Taking care of yourself first that then helped for your career to take off more?
Definitely when I saw you 4 years ago, I was definitely less healthy than I am now, for sure. Because about 4 years ago, that's when I was doing a lot of, I remember I was doing a bunch of colleges and I was also doing a bunch of Adderall. Now, I have ADD, so I'm prescribed the Adderall,
Uh huh.
but I remember, and I do not recommend this, it did not help anything. But I remember I would kind of like, if you're prescribed it like a certain way, like one a day, not
Mm-hmm.
like none for a week. I'm about to do college. I'll take a bunch. So I was kind of
Jeez.
doing that. So it wasn't a healthy or sustainable way to be. So I stopped doing that probably pretty soon after I did Colbert that first time. And being
Mm-hmm.
healthier definitely helps everything. I know there's like that mindset of like, I mean, sometimes I'll feel like if I'm in a bad place, I'll have a better show because I just don't care. But I don't know if that is necessarily true or just like a narrative I'll tell myself to not try to be like wallow in feeling angry or whatever.
What
But
did
I
you?
do feel like I'm in a much better place than I was then. And with the content,
Yeah.
that was kind of it was seeing like other. I mean, like in New York, Andrew Schultz has been hitting it with the content for a while, and so when you see someone being like, "Oh, I didn't know necessarily I could put that type of stuff out there," then that started I mean, the podcast. So now I do two. I do the two podcasts: Emma's Bunker and Inside the Closet, not Secret Keepers. But and then I'll do a morning radio thing once a week. But it was just seeing kind of like being inspired by what other people are like sharing, and then just wanting to share, I guess.
So first, yeah, I want to dive deeper into both of those topics, but first,
Sure,
just on
anything.
the personal health, just because I feel like this is something I talked about Mark Norman with as well, was just like taking care of your own health. He said when he started taking care of his personal health more, not from the drinking clearly, but he started exercising and
Right.
things like that, that he started to find more success in his career. And I have found little spurts of that when I get good momentum on my health, that more
Right.
positive things start to happen. Like, have you seen that? And what did you specifically change in your life, whether diet or exercise, that is attributed to that?
So I would say it started with not drinking, and
Okay.
then I was starting, and now I'm not good at saying like I would have a hard time being like, no, I need to plan shows in a way that is sustainable because when you start getting stuff, you're like, I'll do it, I'll do it. I remember one time saying when I first was getting colleges, the booker was like, hey, I had a show I had a show in Arkansas. And he was like, I had a cancellation at a college in Vermont, but you'd have to get from Arkansas to Vermont, and there's not a direct flight where you're going. So do you want me to book you on this because I had this dropout? You like it was like a last minute thing. And I remember saying, yeah, you book it. I'll figure out even if it's just my carcass, I'll get it there. So not not doing things where I have to refer to myself as a carcass definitely helped me. Like if I have to say yeah, just get my dead body, I'll just get my body will be dead, but I'll get it there.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear myself have to say something like that, I'll go, you know what, I can't do that. I'm not gonna be able to make it. I don't need to, and it's not gonna be productive or good for them. They could have a better show from someone who's not taking a red eye and driving, and it was like winter, and I remember like
Ugh.
whipping through the snow like a dysfunctional Santa Claus. It was just like it was just a total mess.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it also made me enjoy comedy a little bit more because I didn't have everything wasn't resting on the stand up. So if you're getting really unhealthy and then you're just like, okay, I'm doing this in your brain because I have to for comedy, then so much rests on each show. So then if you had a bad show, you're like, there goes the validation for my whole life. And that's not good show, bad show. You just want to take something for it for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just had that experience where I drove like 6 hours one way for not a lot of money. Oh, it
Yeah.
was depressing. It was gas money, and I booked it like 5 months in advance before I was even thinking of myself as someone who deserved better. I drove
Sure.
there. I I showed up 15 minutes late to the show. And I was like, it was a Comedy Zone gig. So it was like a host and headliner. They do like a 2-person show a lot of the time. So imagine driving 6 hours knowing you're going to be late on the other end of that trip. But that was the moment for me where I'm like, I need to be more strategic and mindful about what is the
Strategic.
return, you know?
Totally.
Is it,
The strategic is I had something similar where I actually missed the show. I was driving to Syracuse from New York, and I got stuck in traffic. And while I'm driving, I'm knowing there's no way in hell I'm gonna make the show. Like it was just, I think I had 2 hours to drive 4 hours. I'm
Right.
speeding. I get pulled over because I was going so fast. I got pulled over. I was like, I gotta get to my show, and the guy was like, "Where's the show?" I told him where it was. He's like, "Well, first of all, you're criminal speeding. I'm gonna give you a ticket. Second of all, you're not gonna make that show." And it took like another half hour of me even driving before I was like, I'm not gonna make it. So that was that was definitely a learning thing as well. You have to do a little bit of math.
and you seem
Math for
to,
yourself.
yeah, you seem to have like pinpointed on strategy. Are you more strategic in where your comedy career is headed now? Or are you more like thoughtful or organized about it?
I mean, I I know that the best answer I mean, yes, in that I hope as you keep doing things like almost by like osmosis, maybe you become more like strategic and better about stuff. I think that I had really been for maybe like 2 or 3 years, and then Uh, yeah, I get. I
There's
maybe a
no
little
wrong
bit more
answer. It's
strategic.
okay, Emma. There's no wrong answer.
It's tough. It's tough career stuff. It's so hard with entertainment to ever feel like you're doing it the right way, especially
Mm.
with comedy too. And then trying to figure out like having the right people around you is like a tricky. That's I think it's easier too if you have like a specific thing that you're working on or working towards to be like I'm like the strategy is like built into that. But I would say
Ooh.
I definitely have a clear sense of my voice and what I enjoy doing. That's for sure. So I guess by that I have a clearer idea of what I like to do and then trying to say yes to doing that type of thing, that has helped me be more strategic,
And how were you able
kind
to
of.
find your voice?
I would say it was like it was part me growing as a person, but then also like trusting, finding audiences that I would like trust. Like I did this
Hmm.
morning show it's called Taylor Strecker Show, and her audience is so great, and I'd always have so much fun with them. And then there'd be certain things I would say that I liked to talk about, but then the way that they would respond with that, I'd be like, "Oh, this is great. I didn't necessarily know this is what people would be down to listen to too." And then just trusting myself more, and also I gotta tell you, what the more TV that I watched, that helped too, because like there are certain. I remember watching an episode of Broad City, and I was like, this is so funny. That first season, I remember being like, this is so funny. And that when they made this, they put this out there, having faith that there would be people that would come forward and receive this. So then that made me be like, you got to put out stuff that you like and then connect with the people through that and not just try to do something you think people will like. You want to do something you'll actually like stand behind too.
Boom. That's something we can be guilty as comedians. Is just like, what's gonna go viral? What is the algorithm
Sure.
breakdown? It's more just creating what you enjoy.
Yeah, not trying to. Someone said this to me, so I can't take credit for this line, but I thought it was a really good one. They were like, I'm not even using that microphone that I have near my other one near my head. It's you don't always have to start at the finish line because I think sometimes what we see, like when you see stuff on social media, it's usually the finished product of something. So then you're like, well, I don't know how to connect the dots to create that, so how am I even going to start? But they didn't start with that. They started way back with learning how to do an editing program or getting a video camera, whatever. So thinking that you have to start with that viral video that you see, you got to remember there's a lot of other videos before that that maybe you haven't seen, but that was part of their process too. So you don't have to start at the best thing ever because that's impossible.
And
But you
you
do have to start.
you do have to start. Yeah, you have to
You have
put
to
in the
start.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind
You got to
of
start and you got to start somewhere.
and you
I'm sorry
said
I'm moving you. I'm plugging in my computer.
no, you're great. You
There we
had
go.
talked about having like a strategy, but also like a specific vision behind what you want
Yeah.
to accomplish. So is that when you were
Yeah.
saying 2 or 3 years ago is when you really had it dialed in? Was what were like the things that you were envisioning that you were then able to work towards specifically?
I would say the thing where that I really like felt like I manifested the most, and not that it necessarily worked out, but it was something I really manifested. I remember like years ago wanting to work with this manager, Barry Katz.
Oh
And I remember I
yeah.
was always picturing him, picturing. So this is years and years ago,
Mm-hmm.
picturing because I do believe in self-actualization.
Interesting.
Um, I remember picturing him, and then I wrote somewhere. Chelsea Handler had come out with the book "Are You There, Goddess? Meet Chelsea," and I had a picture of me looking up, and I said, "Are you there, Barry? It's me, Emma." This is years ago, and he wrote me on Facebook and was like, "Did you mean to tag me?" And I was like. So him and I started a dialogue, and then I remember when I went to go meet him, taking this escalator up. His office was like all these escalator floors up, and taking the escalator up, and it was so surreal because I was like, I pictured this moment, and now I'm living this moment. And I've had that with a few other like before, like a TV thing or that moment like right before you have to go on. Or I felt it when I was in the dress with Crazy X. I remember really being like, I want to do a TV show. I want to do a TV show, and then like there's that moment where you're thinking about it all the time, then you kind of do the steps, and then when it's happening, you're like, oh, these two things have merged. I've had that with positive. I think that you can manifest positive things, and then I get scared because like sometimes I'll picture like I'll have this vision of me like in Florida at some like not the coast, like in the middle, and I'm at some bar, and I'm like eating like like they're not warm anymore onion rings,
Hmm.
and things never worked out. And someone's like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I was trying to make it in show business. I have that visual. And when that pops in my brain, I'm like, I got to get out of here because I don't want to like bring that into existence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like always easy to just picture like, I want to get more disciplined about being like, no, this is a positive thing I want and work towards that.
And you were, for the Barry Katz visualization, you would like allot time every day to visualize vividly, like being in the room with him type deal?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
It was interesting because it was almost like I think I've looked and read things like The Secret more, which is a book where that's what she talks about a lot. That you do have to take with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of like visualization stuff. I think I had done that more after. I think I was just doing it naturally. Like I wanted that so much that I was just picturing, and then it came to be. And then when I learned more, like, oh, there's a whole thought process and like ideas of like goal setting behind that. Then I tried to do it more like strategically, as you said, but it was sometimes when you know the back end of how you're supposed to do things, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it more. You just then have the tools to like recreate the thing you did naturally.
Ah, so how did that meeting go?
It was a great meeting. I think we worked together for about a year, and it was or yeah, I mean that first meeting that was great. I had a very good experience with him. I don't think it was the time for me to be. I was like just starting out. There wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a good timing thing. But I had that first meeting was a great meeting. I look back on those like meetings and memories like extremely fondly.
And I've never been in one of those meetings. What happens? Is it more like, "Hey Emma, I see you tagged me," or like, I'm sorry, I
Well,
just did my first
they
Barry Katz impression. Everyone has one. That
that
was mine, I
was the first
guess.
one.
Yeah.
No way, you can practicing that.
I've been visualizing that.
That was a good one, Joel. In that particular meeting, that particular meeting was very like take this escalator all the way. There was this. I just remember there was like a long escalator, and then it was in this giant building with all windows. And this is not what a meeting can be. Run the gamut of like anything. But this meeting was, and it was one of the first ones like this I had done. So I was like, is it all like this?
Right.
Yeah, and then you go in his office, and his, an assistant and an intern greet you, and then I remember going in, and Jesus was there. No, it was like it was going in, and then there was a giant white couch. There was like this giant white couch, coffee table, big desk, and then he was there. So it was, and there was like windows out overlooking Hollywood. So it's what you would picture. That's not what lots of meetings are. Just like you're in like a conference room,
Hmm.
you know,
But
meeting
what do
someone.
you talk about? Because apparently he wanted to work with you. So is he asking like, what is your strategy? What is your plan? Type deal.
It was good. Yeah. So in those meetings, so it's a lot like it's like a first business date. So that would be a meeting where there's something called a general meeting.
Okay.
So a general meeting is when usually someone sets you up with someone at like a production company or a casting thing or something, and you generally meet them.
Okay.
Now, I've done a million billion general meetings. I kind of think it's a time for some people in the entertainment industry. And now I have friends that like work at production companies and media, and they'll be like, okay, kind of, it's like a paid way to have a break in our day. So, so it is what it is. But this meeting was more than a general meeting because we'd already like generally talked, and there was like interest in working together. So it was more like, yeah, tell me about yourself, what are your goals? And then I think if someone would, now that I've been doing this longer, someone would say, and here's what I've assessed from what you're doing, and here's where I would help you. So actually,
Ah.
if I have some advice to impart, I think so much we're working towards being like the giver in it, and wanting someone to want to work with us, we forget to stop and say, so what are you going to do for me in this equation? Here's everything I've worked for. Here's everything I want to do. Here's what I think I can offer. And then just wanting them to be like, yeah, I want to work with you. But stop. What's that person how are they going to contribute to that conversation? And do you believe them? Because then you got to look at yourself as having some value too, because then you pay them. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So like if you were hiring someone, if you were hiring a babysitter, if you were hiring someone to mow your lawn, you'd be like, you wouldn't be like, this is my house, this is my lawn. Oh, the grass is so easy to mow. It'll be so fun for you to do. Could you imagine doing that and then never stopping to be like, do you have a lawnmower? You got to see if they have something they can even do the things with. So make sure you interview if you do it, not on a general meeting, because that's just getting to generally know each other. But if you're in a meeting where it's like, we're going to work together in some capacity, see what their plan is for you. And then if you can trust that. And people in entertainment are generally very charming as well, which can be tough.
Yeah. Alonzo Bowden, actually, we just did one with him last week, and he was saying if a manager takes you out to lunch and doesn't pay, that manager's not for you.
Never. That's great. Even the most fucknut of the fucknuts would know to pay.
Yeah.
But yeah, also maybe you want someone that's like watched your content too, like because someone could. I mean, if they're taking you out to lunch, well, then they're not taking you out to lunch. Then you're having lunch.
Yeah.
But that I would agree with that because then it would have been better for them to be like, come in and meet, or like let's get coffee, something that they could. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the
I think people get
questions here too.
On the idea of getting a manager too.
Yes.
Like there's a friend of mine. He's so talented, and he's been fixated on I don't have a manager, which I relate to too. I remember thinking that before I had ever worked with one. I think we get fixated on these things because entertainment comedy is so vast and broad. It's hard to just like have that thing to work towards. So it's something to work towards.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you're hitting the table and it's picking up, so I'm actually curious.
Oh.
No, I'm wondering if your mic's picking up because I don't know if that mic would pick up the table. Is the mic on or plugged in?
It should be plugged in.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure because I was hearing the table, but I didn't know.
I was leading.
You know, as a fellow podcaster, you know, there's always going to be someone who's like, that interview was amazing, but your audio, I hate you. You know, it's like.
Totally. And it does turn to hate really quick.
It does. Oh, my gosh.
I love this, but I hate you and everything you stand for because of that tapping sound.
Exactly. Yeah. And I actually had an interview, ended up getting ruined because she was playing with her keys the whole time. The entire interview playing with her keys. And this was probably like the 5th or 6th interview I ever did. So I didn't even know what was going on. And then you couldn't even listen to it. The audio was ruined and I haven't been able to get her back. So it's fine.
One time this is really bad. I think I cut like two toenails while I was doing call recording. I've never lived it down because the comments were like, and it was on Inside the Closet, and it was like, people were like, who was doing that? Mateo was like, the other comedian I do it with. He was like, it wasn't me. And the intern was like, it wasn't me. And then I was like, oh God, I can't believe, because I thought I had like muted whatever I did, I didn't do it right. And it was, so I can't imagine keys the whole time because it was like, and,
yeah, this was just clank, 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 just the whole time. And it was bad because she's like the manager of the Punchline here in Atlanta. So she's been in the business like since the 80s. She has stories with every comic you can imagine. Like she was sharing Eddie Murphy stories and then none of it was usable. And I had to really convince her to do it the first time. And since then she hasn't, we're still going to get her, but it's just like one of those,
you're gonna get it.
You
know what? Maybe if you preface it where you're like, look, there's some clinking. Things are going to be clinking around. There's a ton of clinking. I regret the clinking, but I promise you it's a good interview. Only listen if you can handle the clinking. So no surprises. What the hell is this clinking? You know what clinking is? You know, I didn't like it either. Here's the deal. Here are the stories.
It's not a bad idea. Okay. We'll put it on the Patreon. That's what we'll do.
There you go. Perfect.
All right, let's get into these questions because we had people excited when I was sharing it, saying how much they just loved you. So, all right, let's get into this first one here. We're actually going to start with Mark's because we've been on the subject of like shifts within your career. So we'll start with Mark's here. So this is Mark White. He asks, Emma, can you think of your greatest breakthrough milestone or event and what led up to it?
I would say the greatest breakthrough I'm gonna tell you two of them.
Okay.
But tracing back, like the real breakthrough, honestly, was when I got into the college market, and I'm not in that market anymore. I don't really do any college. I don't do schools anymore. And that was so. How that came about was I did this thing called Access TV. And when I'm going to say breakthrough, I'm going to use that in regards to becoming like a professional entertainer. So I had done this thing called Access TV. It was like a cable access show that it was live at Gotham Comedy Club in New York. And I did that, and I remember, and it was a really good tape. And I asked somebody, this guy I used to intern for when I was in college. I interned for a guy who ran shows. He was like a event producer. And I said, do you know anybody in the college market that I could send this to? And he was like, yeah, I know this one guy. So I sent the tape to this guy. He gets back to me right away, and he's like, yeah, I want in. Let's work together. You look like Ellen. Let's do this. So I was like, well, that was easy. So then I sent the tape to a bunch of other college agents being like, oh, I already got this. The first guy. The second person was like, okay, you swore, pass. And then the other person was like, okay, how much time do you have? Do you have an hour? And I was like, an hour? I got like 10 minutes. And they were like, call me in 4 years, pass. And then the next person didn't, I don't know, maybe they didn't get back to me. So I circled back to the first guy. He never asked how much time I had. He was just like, let's do this. So I started working with him, and he submitted me to the NACAs. And when I got in that first year, I got into these NACAs, which is where you showcase for colleges. And once I got into those, then I was able to get a manager and an agent because I had something to offer monetarily, where I was like, hey, I'm doing these things where I'm making money. Do you want to be a part of what I'm doing for that? And then so that really was a big break for me, because all of a sudden I was doing things on like a professional level. And then I would say the next break was doing Colbert. But that college break, it was like that break happened, and then things moved like pretty quick from there in terms of getting the schools, getting the other traction. With anything else I've done that's been kind of like a break, where it's like you break through something and then you're like up another thing. In some regards, things haven't happened fast after that. In my, like, where it's like, and I think that's like dangerous thinking, where it's like being like I remember after I did Just for Laughs, I remember being like, okay, break, and then nothing. So I felt like I had done something wrong. I remember actually that's when I was with Barry Katz, and I remember sitting with him, and it was really surreal, because if you've seen the documentary Comedian, where he's with Orny Adams at Just for Laughs near this fireplace, and I sat with him there.
What?
And also, Joel, guess what? I saw Orny Adams there too. While I'm sitting with Barry Katz, and I see Orny Adams, and guess what he was doing? He was taking a selfie of himself near the bar, which is, if you've seen the documentary, that's the most like what you would expect. He's literally at the bar trying to get the perfect selfie.
Oh my god!
And I was just like, man, life is weird. But I remember asking, I was like, is it all over for me? Because I just felt okay about my showcase. And he was like, Katz was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, is it over for me? I just did okay. And he was like, no. And then I was expecting, I don't know, anytime you start expecting, then that really is like a danger zone. Because then if you don't get whatever you're expecting, no, it's hard to keep moving forward if you never expect anything, because then you're like, what's the point? But the less you can expect that isn't something that you have a direct hand in, the better, I say.
And that comes
that
back.
Would have saved me a bunch of, I would say.
So
that was the first like break and that's something that you can create that break.
Yeah, is that what did you, I guess it was like, oh, never mind. He didn't say what you attribute to it. He said what led up to it. So you did say that.
That's
never mind.
But I will say this. I mean, I think it helped that I ticked off the gay box with the colleges. So I can't say, oh, just apply to college. And I mean, I had a really good tape. And even with doing those showcases, I remember whatever my jokes were, I was running them by the college agent. He was like, why don't you come out? Say you're gay. Say you're dyslexic, gay, dyslexic, gay, dyslexic. And I was like, oh, I was opening with something about, me and my sister or something. He was like, yeah. Your sister's what? I'm like, like 19 months younger than me. He's like, no, she's straight and you're. And I was kind
Oh,
of like, and
wow.
you're so. But he was. I mean, in terms of booking shows, that did make sense at the time.
What are some of the wildest things you've heard in like a meeting or from someone important who is like, could you gay it up a little bit or anything like that?
No one's ever said that because I think when I like when I started like getting into those situations, that was almost like old news a little bit.
Okay.
But one of the funniest things that happened in a meeting was it was this production company I'd met with a couple times, and I was meeting with this one guy, and he's like, I'm gonna have you meet my boss. So he brings his boss in for the meeting, and the guy who I'd been meeting with before had listened to this podcast I did, and the title of the podcast was like, How do you have sex? So we're in the meeting with his boss, and the guy looks at me and he was like, yeah, I've been keeping up with you. And then he paused and he went, so how do you have sex? He's referencing the podcast. His boss, like he had no context for what the guy was talking about. So his boss was like, hey, okay, we do not do that here. Emma, I don't know what, and like started like looking at the guy like, are you fucking crazy? And then that guy was really confused. And then I was like, no, he's referring to a podcast I did. He's not literally asking me how I have sex, but I think I almost witnessed his boss have a heart attack because he's just like seeing a lawsuit before his eyes in real time. Like he like leaned back in his chair, big boy, leaned back. I thought he was gonna fall, lunges forward, and is like. So that was one of my like favorite memories of a meeting, just watching that catastrophe unfold. But for the most ridiculous thing said, I'd say that was like the most ridiculous situation. The most, no one, but I've heard a lot of, I know I've gone on auditions where I can tell I had an audition not too long ago and it was for like a really like butch role. It was for League of Their Own. And when I went in, I was trying to be in character and I kind of knew the casting director. So she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying to be good. And she was like, oh, all right. But that's not a good sign if someone casting something is like, what are you doing? And then you have to be like, I'm trying to act. So
Right. Yeah.
you know.
That's comforting though to know, that you don't have any like negative stories of things like that happening. So that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think people try to like protect them. I think someone would have to be like pretty far gone to, oh, actually, no. I was doing a Skype with this production company, and it was me and two other girls, and the guy, this was like right when Me Too stuff was starting.
Mm-hmm.
We start the call, and the guy's like, "Oh, better put on some pants. Oh, well, you can only see me from the waist up. Better put on some pants." And we're all like, "Eh." And then later in the call, one of the girls was straight, me, and then the other girl was gay, but she was very feminine. You couldn't tell that she was gay. And he was like, so do you have a boyfriend? He said, do you have a girlfriend? And then he pointed to her and he goes, do you have a boyfriend? She was like, I have a girlfriend. And then there was like this awkward silence. And she was like, I'm gay. And he went, oh. And we were all like, and then we were like, is that okay? And he was like, oh, I mean, to me, I don't see it as being anything wrong, but I don't know about other, basically telling her to be like in the closet. And me and the other girl were very surprised by that. But I want to note, we were already working with that production company. We were like in a deal where they were going to produce something we were doing. So that probably made him more comfortable. I bet if it was like a meeting where we hadn't all signed on, this is a couple years ago, like 3 years ago. If were like interviewing each other, I highly doubt he would have been. When he was like, I got to put on pants, I was like, in the time where everyone's trying so hard to be so PC that it's gotten totally ridiculous, then you Skype with someone and they're like, I'm naked. And you're like,
so did you still work with him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He ended up telling someone that happened, and then he did get someone like talk to him. He got in trouble, and then we kept working together.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I am wearing pants. I just want the record to show. I don't.
Oh, thanks.
That's so bizarre. Yeah, that's bizarre. Okay. So let's cleanse our palates with some comedy process here. Christian Williams asks, what is your process when you go back and review your recorded sets?
Thank you for asking that, Christian. So my process now is I will when I'm the most like structured with it, I'll try to go back and I'll be playing it, and then I'll try to transcribe, and I will transcribing has definitely been the most productive thing. I'm not as disciplined about it as I would like to be, but I'll transcribe it, and then I'll look for things that are like redundant, and through that editing process, then I'll usually like take a moment, take a couple days, and then I'll start like just like free talking almost to myself to see if
Mm-hmm.
there's something else I can come up with from that more structured thing. Because when I'm writing, I'll be like all over the place, but then only in the editing will I be like, okay, I gave this example which I already gave, so I only need one of them. So I'll try to. Mine's definitely a combination of writing on stage and then writing from just like listening to sets. But I'll have a hard time with writing on stage and then remembering how I said that. So that's where I'll try to like listen back to stuff.
And when you transcribe, is it always what was the funniest, or is it something that struck you as like, oh, there's something interesting there that could turn into something funny?
I'll usually try to do it where it's something interesting that could turn into something funny, and then if it hasn't turned into something funny, be like, okay, well, what's wrong with this thought, or like how can I build on this thought? But transcribing, normally you talk faster than you can write. So, but that's actually helps me with the transcribing because play, transcribe a little bit, stop, go back, transcribe more. So that helps because you're just like listening to yourself a bunch, and that's definitely productive. I find, even though that sucks, it sucks. I mean, it sucks. I spent a long time looking around for other ways to not have to do that, but for
Mm-hmm.
me that's what I found. And also part of the process, if I get really stuck on something, me being around other comics and watching other people do comedy will help me because it gets me inspired in that I'll be like, oh, this is what it is. It gets me inspired because I'll have fun watching other people if I like them. And then if then watching them will make me be like, oh yeah, comedy is fun. People are enjoying this. This is fun. Go back, try to tap into that instead of the mental cramp of being like, oh, my, this isn't funny.
Yeah, and I think I've noticed in being a fan of yours and seeing the evolution of your comedy is it does seem like you're having more fun on stage. Is that
Oh, that's
intentionally
good.
translating? Like you're like, I found when I had more fun with the audience, they would have more fun with me. Was that something you had to develop and be aware of?
Definitely when I have more fun, they have more fun with me because there's a much more like open energy. Yeah, I think the longer you do it, the more because I remember watching the show and it was like everyone was bombing, and then this like guy who'd been doing it forever went up and he changed the energy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a mark of someone who's been doing it longer. We're like, and that comes in with acting. I have a friend who is a comedian and an actress, and I was like, wow, no matter what you're feeling, you bring the same energy on stage. And she was like, yeah, because that energy goes with my material. So she was like, I need to bring that because that applies to what I'm talking about in the material. So that made me start to think about, okay, I'll try to like create the fun before the fun is happening, and then it kind of can go from there. But that can also be kind of emotionally exhausting. And it's hard to do if you're in Las Vegas.
Why is that?
Man, I don't know.
It's
There's
just
something about Las Vegas where it is like Las Vegas is tough, so that's where I'll like buckle down the most and be like, I'm gonna have fun until I have fun, and then it's like pushing like a dead porpoise up a mountain. No offense to
do
people
you
in
have
Las
any
Vegas.
rituals or a process to getting in that energy zone even when you're not feeling like it?
hmm So what I'll do is I'll pace around, and then this is something I'll say. If it's something where I'll feel like nerves or I start thinking about other stuff, this is something that brings me back to the moment. I'll say, it's just you and the people. It's just you and the people. It's just you and the people. And that to me creates the energy of between just me and them and not thinking about all these other things in my life or other people who might be thinking of something, or there's someone there that I might get nervous about seeing me. Get them out of my head because it's just me and the people, me and the people. And business people will come around to what's happening with you and the people. The industry, I feel, might pick someone that they like, but then if the people don't eventually come around, those aren't your real friends. Eventually, they're going to follow the people buying the tickets. So they'll come around to whatever's happening, if you're you and the people, you and the people. I mean, I've definitely seen like industry bet on some people where it's like the person and the people is not happening. It might be happening
Mm.
for them in the industry, but and then I don't know how that plays out long term.
And that ties back to when you were talking about In the college market, it's like you got a manager because you had something to offer monetarily. It's like,
I might be throwing myself under the bus a little bit with that. That guy, that manager actually was like totally awesome, and he might say, "Well, I also liked you because like I thought you were funny or
oh
other reasons."
yeah,
But in my brain, there was like a clear thing to go back to. I think that's what got the email open. I literally, the subject line in the email was like, "I'm doing a bunch of colleges. Do you want to talk?" Like something like that to pique the interest.
yeah. I mean, no, it's a business relationship, and like I interviewed the head of comedy at Innovative Artists, and her thing was, yeah, like if you want a manager, you need first something to manage. So that's all I'm
Right.
saying. Is like, yeah, you've got to bring something to the table.
Totally.
Hmm.
100 totally.
All right, the next
Bring
one.
something to the
Uh
table
huh.
more than that's like more of a bring something to the table that's because it's so tough because like someone could have so many things they're bringing to the table that then they don't get a manager, but it's like you still have stuff to bring to the table. That particular person just didn't see it.
So back to comedy writing here. This is from Chase, who was super jazzed that to see you were on here. I think
Thanks, Chase.
he just rewatched your Netflix special last night, actually. So in
Thanks, Chase.
preparation for this, so yay, the hot breathiverse, so exciting. So Chase asks, I've noticed you have expanded a few jokes you did on Netflix. Have you expanded the jokes since that show, or did you edit them down for the comedy lineup? Example, the I'm the man one bit. Also, 6 p.m. on a Tuesday is one of my favorite jokes.
Thank you. Did he see me expand it? When did he see the other time that I did it where I expanded on it? You think it was I think I did the man one again on Colbert, and I had just written that joke when I did the Netflix. So when I did the Netflix, I kind of wedged that in there. It wasn't planned. It was like
Mm.
I was vibing with the audience, and we filmed it 2 times. So and I did different sets each time, like the same. Probably say it's a 15-minute set. They film a 20-minute set, edit it down. I probably did the same 10 minutes on each show, and then I did a different other 10 minutes. And the man one stuff, I like threw in there and I didn't watch my Netflix 15 for a while after it came out because I was too like nervous to watch it. And then the that man one, that was like the baby phase of it, where it was like just that thought. And then by the time I did it on Colbert, I had been doing it more, and then I had through doing it on stage had come up with more endings. And let me tell you something. That joke is way better now than it was, but now I can't do anything with it because I already did it 2 times. So now that joke, so that's a bit that actually I wish that I had saved, but it's hard to know you're gonna make. Also, I think once I took the pressure off of preparing it for TV, that's when I could really have fun with that joke. So that joke is
Mm.
now I have much more fun with it than when I was like prepping it for something. But it's like okay, now I've prepped it for something. Maybe it's like in a relationship after you stop getting comfortable. I mean, not, after you start getting comfortable and you show all the sides of yourself and the person still accepts you, then it's like, okay, now we can have more fun with what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's what it, but the difference is that I couldn't use that joke anymore, per se.
Yeah, what is the preparation for like a late night set? Are you transcribing? Are you rehearsing like at home everywhere you go? Like how tedious was that?
There's a lot of transcribing, and then and what I've noticed with other bookers too is like they come around with you and they watch you. Like I remember right before, like pretty quick before we went in quarantine, like that, maybe like that same month, I was seeing, like I'll see the Letterman booker in New York walking or going around with comics, like running the set, and then he'll have them do a bunch of sets at the different clubs and do notes, and then similar with Colbert, and I'm sure with the other ones, like the booker will go around with you and then look at notes and kind of edit with you or say you can't say this or you can say this, like stuff
Wow.
like that. I've never done Letterman, so I don't know, but I know that he goes around with the comic and they run a bunch of sets. And that was the same thing with Colbert, where you're just like running it, running it, running it, running it, running it, running it.
Oh, and Chase said he saw the clip from the Comedy Cellar.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. So when I did that Comedy Cellar one, I hadn't done that on a Tuesday joke in such a long time, and it was so fun to do at that show. So I did this show, and I remember just having a really good time at that show, and I ended up kind of on a whim. I was gonna like edit one new thing and put it up there, but I ended up on that set, I hadn't done that on a Tuesday joke. Like, I think I stopped doing it pretty soon after I did the Netflix. I hadn't done that on a Tuesday joke in such a long time, and it was so fun to do it on that show because I was just having such a good time that show, and I was like, I felt like it would work with the vibe of what I had seen before on it, so I like threw it in there, and that, yeah, that was really fun. But I stopped. I don't really do that joke anymore. I don't think I've done it. I don't think I had done it in a long time, and then I haven't done it since then. But all bets are off. Maybe in Corona, maybe that'll be the one joke I'll just, it'll be the only joke I'll do. No context.
All right, and let's get to we'll
And
start.
thanks for watching those. I appreciate that.
Oh, Chase, I love that. That's what I've loved about growing this show and this community is like just like the positivity behind it and the support and how like
Totally.
I've had several guests on here that reach out to me and are like, "Yo, I had a lot of people contact me after your
That's
episode.
great.
You're doing something there." So it's
That's
very
great.
inspiring. So,
Totally. And the process of comedy is such a great thing to talk about. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but it's my favorite thing to talk about probably.
I mean, that's what this whole show is like inside the actor studio
Yeah,
for comics. And even
totally.
like Alonzo was only going to do 30 minutes. And then at 30 minutes, he's like, no, let's keep going. Like he was in like,
Right.
there's not really a show where we can really, there's a few out there where you can really nerd out in an intellectual way
Yeah.
about comedy.
Right.
So, and we're actually having Jesse David Fox on here Wednesday, who is like, he's like at the pinnacle of nerding out on a comedy podcast.
Oh,
Um,
great. Is he a
Oh, he
podcaster?
hosts a good one. Are you
Oh
familiar?
man, that's a great that
Yeah.
ooh, it's a great. I was literally gonna mention that, and then I was like, oh, maybe it's rude to mention another podcast
Oh
on
no.
your. So when you're saying that, I was gonna say that yeah, I've listened to a couple episodes, and that for writing is like great to listen to
Yes.
because man, it's so interesting to listen to hear about. I was about just like how people submit for things and the
Mm.
process behind it because we don't a lot of times too, at least for me, if you see someone doing something, you're like, oh, someone just gave them that, but then it's like you hear from everyone, they're like, no, I did this and I did that and I got it's very rarely did someone just get something.
Of course, yeah. And that's why I love those details of like what happened in the meeting. Like I've never been in that room, you
Right.
know. So
Right.
it's yeah. There's a lot. Let's talk about sets is another good one about comedy process. School of Laughs is another good one. Behind the Bits is a newer one. I was just a guest on. So oh, Chase said good one is his favorite podcast. No offense, Joel. Okay, that's enough out of Chase. Thank you, Chase. Oh,
You
okay.
got too comfortable.
So let's get to Earl's here, and then we'll start to land this plane. This is another process one. Earl Anderson asks, "How important are nonverbal cues for you?"
Wow, that is such a good question. Okay, that's such a good question because okay. Also, if I hit the thing, it does a sound. Don't be definitely let me know because
All good.
I'm just using my hands when I'm talking.
Yeah.
Um, so really important. I'm gonna say too important. It's like the nonverbal cues of the audience is like so important to me. So that's something with Vegas that I had to be like, no, whatever their body language and cues are, you can modify that through the presentation you're giving. So it's really important to me because I think like nonverbal. I'm assuming if he's talking about like what the audience's body language is, that's
And
really how I read the room before I go up. Like that,
oh,
like I'll look at the body language of people and suss that out more than like any type of like what's their age or what's the race, class, gender, any of that stuff. Okay, you can like read, but the thing is in openness. Like Jared Fried's a comedian. He has a joke about when people cross their arms in the front row. It's like the international like "fuck you" to comedians, just paraphrasing it. But it's also like how are they crossing their arms or what's so all or if they are they like looking around or are they talking a lot or are they what's happening with talking a lot obviously would be a verbal cue but are they like shifting or looking or did they like are they looking like they're itching to look at their phone or are they like so engaged and they want to be laughing the worst the worst nonverbal cue and this is like burned in my head. I was doing a show at it was I was in DC and I love doing comedy in DC and this couple had come out to see me from a show the year before And I remember like wishing I had had more new jokes. Like I think whatever amount of time, and I was like wishing I had more new jokes. And I was doing a joke I knew I had done that year before. And I'll be like really hard on myself, even if it was like, okay, the same. I did have plenty of new jokes, but I remember doing a joke I'd done the year before. And I looked at them and they were like smiling, like they wanted to laugh and were into it. But I was interpreting that they had seen it before. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, from this body language, they're like disappointed that I didn't write more. Now I have no idea what's going on in their head. I have no clue. But that nonverbal clue to me that I took as wanting to support, wanting to laugh, and then I'm not delivering it crushed me. Like I was like depressed. Like I remember I can picture the woman's face looking at her boyfriend, and in my brain she's looking at him like, ooh. But all they were doing was going like, and so it's too important to me. And I've read books about like nonverbal communication. I can send you the titles of them because I don't remember them offhand.
Yeah.
But like how to use your like body language to be more open, because I'd noticed a lot of times me like putting my hand in my pocket or like holding myself or stuff that doesn't seem as open. But I would say those nonverbal cues really impact my like timing on stuff.
Yeah. What are some that you incorporate into your performance as well? Like you said, the hand on the pocket and things like that.
Is that what he meant?
He didn't clarify, but I think that was valuable to learn how you read the room, but then now how you actually perform for the room. It's great. Yeah, it's all good.
I bet that is okay. So nonverbal stuff to me, definitely facial expressions I like incorporate a lot. That I'm trying to be more aware of because it can make a big difference. And I mean, it does make a big difference. Everything you're doing up there like has quite an effect on everything else you're doing because it's so stripped down. I mean, it's just you and the microphone, and maybe there'll be like a piano or something on stage, but so everything that you do is amplified because like if you hadn't eaten if there was like 2 chips, I feel like you'd like chew and enjoy those chips more than if you had like a million pieces of chips. Then you'd be shoving them in your mouth, but then each chip you're like probably feeling the chip more. Bad example, but like so the nonverbal stuff, I think that the more comfortable I am and the more like I use my face, that like really helps me present the joke. And the like I consider like pausing to be nonverbal because you're not talking, and I think that so much of comedy is building tension and releasing it. You can release that tension non-verbally through an action because you can say something and then show in your face that you disagree with what you're saying, or if what you're saying is incongruent with the expression on your face. Humor can come from that because it's incongruent. So you need to if you have a joke that relies on that, you have to make sure to then do the punchline as your face.
Oh, do you have an example?
No.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot there. It was just sounded.
No, I should. I've thought about it enough that I should have some example. But there's definitely like faces that I'll do, especially if I'm pretending I'm like shocked or like pretending to like think about something. Where then I'll like say something and then I'll kind of be like that, and that's me trying to like go with the reaction that I would think they would be having. And I mean, comedians that I think of I remember watching Louis C.K. and seeing him recreate moments that I had no idea were premeditated. Like on stage, watching him like pause and then be like, oh, I don't know why I said it like that. Oh, wow. And even that would be pre-scripted.
Oh, wow.
Well, I would watch Andrew Schultz. Like, I remember watching him way back pause and be like, how's he fucking pause like that? Like, he would, like, build up the pause and, like, be like, just hold it. Pop.
Yeah.
And then I said to my girlfriend, I had said, like, I think he's one of the best, maybe the best pauser in the game. And when she met him, we were in a bus at Just for Laughs. We were doing a charity basketball game. And I introduced him, and she goes, oh, Emma said you're, like, the best pauser in comedy. And I was like, I hope that he gets that I meant that, like, as a compliment. I'm a compliment instead of being, like, like I was, like, digging the barrel for compliments. Like, oh, he's good at pausing. But I meant that, and I think he took it like that. Like, building up the pausing as nonverbal communication.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in comedy, your nonverbal cues and your facial expressions are just as much as your words
Mm.
for delivering and creating the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
your words you can fall back on easier. If it's a really tight crowd, you usually have to be more comfortable to make those facial expressions and do those act outs. But so the words you can always fall back on, but the facial expressions and mannerisms and nonverbal stuff are just as important as the other things. But I think they can be a little harder to execute if you're not feeling really comfortable. I mean, have you ever seen someone do an act out when the crowd's not with them? That's rough.
I've been there.
Yeah, or been there. Yeah. Where it's like you're acting it out and they're like, no, and you still have to keep humping the stool or whatever it is
Right.
that the act out is.
Mm-hmm. But
I don't
see,
picture you.
no, I don't hump the stool. I will dab from time to time, but
Oh, that's imagine doing a dab if they weren't with you and then you're dabbing. Like you have to dab, say you have to dab 5 times, so you're on the
Right.
third dab and you're just getting nothing and you're like, you know.
Oh, and Earl said he was actually talking about the audience, so that's great.
Oh, awesome.
He said I was talking about the audience, and Christopher says it reminds him of George Carlin's raise the bridge advice, where he's talking about George Carlin talks about raising the eyebrows when you talk, so you don't look so angry, but you look more like this is crazy.
Right.
But yeah, all that makes a difference.
There's a good interviews called On Comedy. I'm sure you've heard those.
Yeah.
I gotta re-listen to that. I haven't listened to that. I've listened to Seinfeld's ones tons of times. I love listening to him talk about comedy because it's just so the science of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's a good series.
I've dug around trying to find Cat Williams talk about his writing process because I'm just so curious about that. Excuse me, but I've seen little clippets of him talking about writing on stage, but I would just love to get more insight into what his writing process is like.
Maybe we'll get him on this show. Who knows? We'll see. You believe? Is that what?
Believe do it. Practice that as an exercise for self-actualization.
Oh, that's right. Self-actualization. We learned it.
Yeah.
And we self-actualized this episode. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Emma, thank you so much for your valuable time here.
Absolutely.
We're going to land this plane. Mark says, Emma, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. It is obvious you understand the mechanics. So that's a big compliment there. So
you got to understand the mechanics. Otherwise, how are you supposed to like live in a car? You know what I mean? Like if your work is your word and the word relies on the mechanics, like you're like living in that like a big portion of your life and day, then you gotta know the mechanics.
Boom.
Study them ongoing. I'll still flip through like the comedy Bible, or at night I'm always Googling how to write jokes. I've gone so deep in the internet for those blogs because I just love and people say generally the same maximum 15 things. Maximum. And I love reading it.
Oh, that's so great. This far into comedy and you're still a student, you know, that's because I
love reading.
It's so great. You're a great example for comics just to see what's possible, that you're from a small town in Maine with 2,000 people and now you've made it, like you're doing the comedian life. Like you tour, you've been on Netflix, you've been on Comedy Central, you have podcasts, like you're a professional, successful comedian, all from like a small town. That really shows that any of us can really do it, and we really appreciate you like sharing the process.
More than ever, too, with the internet. Absolutely, more than ever. Like, I mean, shoot me in the head, but I've heard rumors if you can get do some TikTok, and I'm not on TikTok.
I'm not. Yeah.
More than ever,
I'm good on TikTok. Yeah, I'm really going all in on this Facebook group and really helping to cultivate this community because there's people all around the world that are interacting in here and sharing comedy tips and what they've learned and getting to.
Yeah, I want to join.
Yeah, we'll invite you to join. That'd be great. Because we do Q&As like weekly in here now, and just we do
that's great.
A morning writing club where we meet up at 10 a.m. and we write for 10 minutes based on a random word. So
I want to do that.
Well, you're invited.
Thanks. I would love to do that.
That's so great. Yeah, I'll invite you to the group when we get off here.
Great.
And where can, because I guess you said you still have 2 podcasts, and where else can people like support you and follow you and all that
So
jazz?
I do. Instagram is my main thing that I'm on all the time. If you go 2 L's and 2 N's, just Emma Willmann on Instagram, and I'm posting a lot more on YouTube. I'm doing videos of the podcast on YouTube for Emma's Bunker, and there's a number on the YouTube header that you can text me at. It's not my actual number, but it's through an app, and it goes right to my phone. So bing, I get it in real time. And then on May 5th, I'm going to be in this show. I was a producer on it. And then I end up on, after 4 episodes, I'm on the show. It's called Turdy Works. It's a reality show. It's on TBS May 5th, so it airs this tomorrow.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, Turdy Works.
Very nice.
It's about a woman in Maine who sells moose poop, and she's really a character. And she is really interested in comedy too. I can't actually. It's a spoiler. She's really interested in comedy. They just told me the one thing to not talk about is what I was about to say, but
Hilarious.
She's really interested in comedy too. Yeah.
And it's based in Maine, you said?
It's in Maine. Yeah.
Wow.
It's in a town of 500 people in Maine.
Oh,
if you Google Turdy Works, the video that got her the show. It's this viral video of her at a craft fair selling her moose poop. Someone just like took it on their phone. Because when I started working on it, I was like, how did she pitch the show? And they're like, no. Someone took this video of her on her phone at the craft fair. Daniel Tosh had her on, and then that's how it came to be.
Wow. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. Where can people see it again?
It's on TBS. And TBS and True. TBS bought True. I think they're airing it right before Impractical Jokers, actually.
Oh, very nice. That's so exciting. Congrats, Emma. And people definitely follow, I would say Instagram for sure. And I'm just real quick, do you have a strategy behind your Instagram? I mean, it seems like all your photos are like very well, like they're all professional photos. You have like captions on your videos, and all the artwork you do is also like professionally done. It seems
Thank you.
It seems like when I look at comedians, I'm like, okay, what is the trend, or what are some like weaknesses of comedians? So I would see a lot of comedians don't have great websites. So it's like, I better have a good website so I stand out from the more popular comedians. And like social media is another way to stand out from the crowd. And you seem to almost curate your content with a professional polish. I'm guessing that's intentional and strategic.
Oh, definitely. I mean, look, you want to respect people. I care a lot about like people's time. So if someone's going to take the time to go look at my page, I'm going to try to put the best foot forward there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I definitely think that is really important. Also now, I mean, it's like a given that you should have these things. But then again, also now, if you can really cultivate one of the things and make those work for you, then everything else can come around to that. But to make it work for you, you got to be at least doing the best that you can on there.
All right. So definitely go to Emma's page just to see like executing social media on a professional level and not just you taking a selfie on the toilet. So
right.
Awesome. Well, Emma, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Anytime.
I'm going to invite you to this Facebook group, and we'll all keep in touch. So thank you, everyone, for the awesome questions. And we will see you on Wednesday with Jesse David Fox. So have a good day, everyone.